Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Friday, the 11th of October, comes to you from London. And the big things that are happening in the markets at the moment is trade talks between China and US. There seems to be hope of a break deal, so the market's feeling a bit buoyed by that. And Brexit hopes of a deal increasing after the Anglo-Irish talks yesterday. So if we take a look first of all at the dollar, we see that the dollar is sinking lower, stronger sterling, stronger euro, just helping there as well. But dollar is still bullish on the medium and long-term charts. If we take a look at the Eurodollar, we see it's risen quite sharply this week against the dollar, but still bearish on the long-term and the medium-term charts, and still lots of downside targets. So this move might be relatively short-lived. Against the yen, the dollar is still looking bullish, and sterling, so we see that big jump yesterday. The key thing is it's held on to this jump. So unless we see some more negative news, it looks like this might be activated as a target. Not yet seen a pullback to lock this column. On the 1-minute chart we have, and we do have a new upside target. So it does look like we're seeing a transition, and also sterling eagerly just about to cross into medium-term bullish territory. Taking a look at the Euro sterling chart, we see here much the same picture, of course, and the Swiss franc chart, we see sterling also jumped yesterday, and the medium-term trends looking set to change now. So quite interesting. Since the August low, we have seen a bit of a recovery in sterling that's starting to take us into medium-term bullish. Of course, the long-term charts are still bearish for sterling. Looking at Bitcoin, we've fallen back a couple of $100. We're down 2.7% this morning, but we are still bullish short-term, but heading back below the cloud, so really hard to read Bitcoin at the moment. As I mentioned, the stock markets globally starting to read hopes into the China-US deal. Not yet bullish on the short-term chart for the S&P 500 index, but we're holding on to the medium-term and long-term trends. Quite choppy in terms of the short-term chart, and we do have downsides in either direction, which does indicate that the market really is still trading sideways and could go either way, but we are still in the long-term bullish trends. Nasdaq also holding its trend, and on the short-term chart it has turned bullish. So that is the first index in the US to really show its bullishness. The Dow not yet through either, but holding on to the trends. And the Russell 2000 index also we're seeing here is still in the doldrums and bearish in all three charts. And the breadth of the market, the 2000 top 2000 stocks in the US, the fact that this index is performing less good than the other indices is still a bit of a worry on market breadth concerns. The S&P futures up 0.4% this morning. The Nasdaq E-mini is up 0.6%. That suggests that the market will close open higher today, and we should see a close to a relatively strong week after quite a lot of volatility. The FTSE index this morning in the UK is up 0.2%, but not down 2.2%. The stronger sterling not helping the blue chips there, but we're still bearish there on 3 time frames as well. And Midcaps in the UK, they've performed better this morning. They're not so heavily foreign earnings denominated, but not enough to turn this chart bullish either. The DAX is up over 1% this morning, so seeing quite a good performance there, and the CAC Quant is up 0.4%, so also stronger there. And Tokyo up 1%, so seeing an improvement there. And the Hang Seng Index up a massive 2.2%, and just starting to push into short-term bullish territory. Not enough, of course, to change the longer-term charts, and no clear upside target yet. The Shanghai Composite was up 0.8% this morning, and the Sensex is up 0.4%. So Asian markets overall performing pretty well, and the S&P 500 index, the Aussie index, the S&P 200 index, also up nearly 1%. Not enough to move this chart short-term bullish. Crude oil jumps back above $60 this morning, so we are seeing a sentiment improvement there, and that is looking now quite bullish on the short-term chart. We've got a target of 63 on Brent crude. Keep an eye on the 1-minute charts for the shorter-term targets. And on WTI, we're seeing here we've got also short-term upside potential now. We're bullish there as well. US NatGas sitting at $2.22 in the doldrums. No signs of recovery there. Gold sitting at 15.02. Weaker dollar helping there, so it's bullish on all three time frames. Holding on. We've got targets to 15.24 and 15.35. So it does look like we will see gold pushing higher in the next week or two. But at the moment, it's the weaker dollar is what's really helping. Silver also looking stronger on the short-term chart as well. Now we're above the cloud. US 10-year yield sitting at 1.47%. Sorry, 1.64%. So they jumped yesterday. That weaker dollar helping, but we are seeing bond yields might well have bottomed here. We look like we're putting in a lower low on this chart. The lagging line shows that up quite clearly on the weekly. So quite a good process there. Bond futures in Germany, we're seeing the German bond actually sank quite heavily yesterday, recovering a little bit of ground this morning, but does look like we might be seeing an end to the bond market. That looking like a head and shoulders moving. Bond yields potentially going to rise, and the bond prices falling. So we just need to keep an eye on that. But the medium-term chart is signaling for the first time in a long time that we're about to turn bearish. That data was coming from Thomson Reuters Icon or Metastock Zenith if you're using a private investor. The same system is really powerful. Here we see a sea of green, so the market's actually up pretty sharply. Looking at the Dow 30 yesterday, Caterpillar, they were up 2.7%. Not enough to change the picture here. This chart has been turning long-term bearish. Cisco Systems were the worst performer. They're down 1.5%. So we have seen a little bit of a variance, but markets were mostly up. We're seeing here Cisco is actually falling down, breaking down, and that's not a good looking chart versus many other tech charts. Microsoft being a great example of something that's just running up and up the hill, outperforming the Dow by 20% this year. Taking a look at the Nasdaq, we're seeing the best performer is Skyworks. They were up 5%. Netflix up nearly 5%, unwinding some of their recent falls, but still long-term in that bearish trend, having changed there. And looking at the downside for the Nasdaq, we've got Liberty Global, NetApp. We saw Cisco Systems there, Electronic Arts. The Aussie market now, we've got the best performer was CYBG. Not enough to change the picture on this chart. Looks pretty awful. And if we look at the top performer, we've got New Farm. They're up down 4%. So we're seeing, although they jumped, they're just unwinding some of that jump this month. And then taking a look at the Nifty 50 in India, we see here we've got Cipla Limited up 3.8%, not enough to change the chart here. Infosys, the next best performer, that chart looking pretty good. And then if we look at the downside in India, we've got Yes Bank yet again in the laggards, underperforming the market by they're 18% versus 100% at the start of this year. So versus the Dow Jones, they've underperformed by 82%. Quite a scary performance. Taking a look now at the UK market, the best performers in the UK. Here we see the live prices coming in from Yahoo Finance. We've got Persimmon, they're up 5%. Royal Bank of Scotland up 5%. The chart's not looking great still there. Maybe getting near recovery, but too early to call on Royal Bank of Scotland. Lloyd's up as well. We're seeing banks just generally up. Financials looking pretty good. If we look at the laggards, we've got WPP, they're down 4%. The long-term downtrend continues. The signs of recovery unwinding as well, so that's why recoveries often take a long time. We've got Burberry Group, quite a few retailers here. We've got also AstraZeneca, they're down 2.5%. So we are seeing some quite big changes here. Burberry, interestingly, breaking below that cloud on the daily chart with downside targets, so quite worrying there as well. The FTSE 250. We've got Galliford Try, they're the best performer, up 5% this morning. Their long-term recovery is, well, the medium-term recovery is underway. The long-term still looking a little bit worrying. Banks continuing here. We've got One Savings, we've got TBC Bank. So we are seeing banks actually improving quite significantly this morning in the UK. On the downside, we've got Ted Baker down a further 5.7%. Their woes continue, just continuing to hit the bottom, underperforming the Dow Jones Index by 75% this year. So So really quite significant. Looking at the top 50 in Europe now, we've got SAP in Germany. They're up 7%. So they're looking pretty strong this morning. Not enough to take the medium-term chart bullish. They've underperformed the last few months, but that's a big jump this morning for SAP, and the long-term chart still in train, of course. We've got on the downside only a handful of stocks. Adidas down this morning, and we're seeing there as well. That's it for today. Until Monday, happy charting. See you then.